Okay, maybe we'll get ourselves started as people just kind of trickle back into the room. I'll just give a bit of an overview for this session. Again, my name is Graham Wright. I'm Research Director of the Heart Program at Sunnybrook, and welcome you to the last session, the third session of the Medventions Day. And this session is really about people. It's I think you heard several of the speakers, especially this morning, emphasize that, especially when you're scaling up a program, it's about the team, getting the right people on the team, and to make the whole thing happen. And you know, none of these major advances in companies happen without the right talents. We're going to have an overview from the HR perspective of putting together the right team, and then we'll look a little bit more at the training side. Basically, how do we prime the pump to ensure that we've got the innovators coming up through the pipeline, both from the clinical side and the technical side and the business side, so that we can really create and build the ecosystem for medical device innovation. And finally, a bit of a vignette of one individual who's actually been very involved in Medventions from early days, and we'll give you a bit of a sense of kind of a personal journey there. So that's what we are up for the next about hour and a half, and then we'll kind of finish things up with a discussion. So probably what we'll aim to do is, again, hold the discussion till the end. But I am going to really encourage the speakers to try and stay on time. With that, I'll try and get ourselves started reasonably on time. So just to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Deborah Duma, who's the Vice President of Human Resources at Baylis Medical. Deborah's been working in this area for many years. She's been working at Baylis since 2015, where she's held a variety of HR roles. And she's worked across multiple industries, in for-profit and not-for-profit, in retail and supply chain. She's had 20 years experience overall in HR. She has accreditations in HR, executive coaching, as well as in law from Osgoode Hall, which probably comes in very handy in the HR area. But today, I believe we've asked her to really talk about developing a talent pipeline for your startup. And obviously, Baylis has been very successful at doing this. So hopefully she can give us some of the lessons that she's learned in those efforts at Baylis. Over to you, Deborah.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this conference today. I hope to share a little bit about Baylis Medical and how we got where we are today from a talent perspective. Hopefully you'll walk away with some ideas of what you should consider as you develop your own talent strategy. Before I get started though, I'd like to share an overview of Baylis to provide you with an understanding of our business and of our growth over the past 10 years. We are truly a Canadian success story and one I am very proud to be part of. Here's what I'll be discussing today: our story, rapid growth and scaling up, talent strategy, and then some time for questions. So first of all, our story. As you may know, Baylis is a Canadian medical device company, and our core business is around developing and manufacturing medical devices in the cardiology field. There are three key individuals that have contributed to our success: Gloria Baylis, our founder; Frank Baylis, Gloria's son and our executive chairman; and Chris Shaw, our president. Chris and Frank met while they were at Waterloo University. Shortly after graduating, Frank first joined Gloria in the business, and then Chris later. And together they grew the business to what it is today. Today, Chris runs our core business, cardiology, on a regular day-to-day basis. Gloria's legacy continues today, from her start as a distributor to where we are today. Gloria was a nurse who started her career in Europe, and she eventually moved to Canada. She decided to get into the distribution business to bring catheters from France to Canada to help serve patients here. Her commitment to improving the lives of patients around the world is our why, and I'll talk about why that's important later. These are the key phases of growth at Baylis. From 1990 to 1999, Baylis's first proprietary innovation, the Nikkonen RF wire, was developed in collaboration with Dr. Lee Benson and Dr. David Nikkonen. It was created to control perforations in delicate tissues in anatomy, especially in newborns. From 2000 to 2009, the RF puncture was built off our existing technologies, and Baylis developed the first major innovation in the field of cardiac transeptal puncture, the NRG transeptal needle. The company moved from distribution to subcontracting to fully integrated product development and manufacturing during this period. 2010 to 2019 was a period of rapid growth as we expanded our portfolio of cardiovascular devices that enable left heart access. And in 2020, First Across is the world's first all-in-one left heart access device, which was designed to achieve the left heart access with controlled precision while reducing the number of exchanges required, as it serves as an exchange wire once access has been achieved. These are the three product families Baylis has been involved in to date. However, cardiology continues to be our core business, and this is what I'll be focusing on. These four core values were put in place by Gloria when she started the company, and they are still in place today and continue to provide us with a solid guiding foundation. So it's technological leadership, employee development, customer service, and corporate social responsibility. As mentioned earlier, we have experienced rapid growth over the last 10 years. A strategy that has proven to be very successful for our business is vertical integration. The talent and expertise we have needed has been brought into the organization. We have also expanded our manufacturing capabilities by bringing in-house a machine shop and extrusion capabilities. Our R&D labs also have a variety of tools and equipment to support product development and prototyping. This strategy provides us with more control, flexibility, and efficiencies, and reduces our reliance on third parties in some areas. Just for some context, I started in August of 2015. We had 170 employees at that time. As you can see, we grew some departments significantly in the last few years, especially production, finance, engineering, functions, sales, and supply chain. All this growth has taken place in a very competitive market for talent. As we have grown and expanded our presence, impact, and virtual footprint, we have been able to attract great candidates for our open roles in this competitive market. Initially, we struggled at times to find engineering talent, but that is becoming easier as we become better known. However, you may be surprised to know we're finding it's becoming increasingly difficult in the GTA to find employees for our manufacturing teams, as the work requires fine motor skills and hand dexterity, and it's quite complex. There's a lot of other jobs that would be easier for people to take on right now that are in that market. As we will discuss later, you really need to differentiate yourself as an employer to become an employer of choice and to attract these types of employees. Today, we have over 750 employees. We have about 90 sales-related positions, the majority of them being in the US, our largest market. Our Montreal office has about 40 employees, mostly in customer service and accounting. And we have about 300 employees located in our two manufacturing facilities in Mississauga. The balance are in our new office, which we moved into in August. And our R&D lab is located there as well, and all our shared service departments. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our talent strategy. I kind of bucket HR into three different groups: find them, keep them, grow them. Today, I'm going to talk more about find them, because this is all about building your talent pipeline. I just want to say you need to put your best foot forward today and differentiate yourself from everybody else. You need to create a good impression and make it easy for people to apply to your company. A positive candidate experience is key. Also, the first person a candidate usually will talk to at Baylis is one of our talent advisors. First impressions are so important here. Our talent advisors are more than just job order takers. They have evolved to really partner with the hiring manager and understand their business and their needs. This way, when they're talking to candidates, they can have much more meaningful and richer conversations because of their knowledge of the role. We also have an always be recruiting mindset. If you meet someone that's not a fit for a role maybe that you had approached them for, keep them in mind for something else, because down the road you might have something for them. It's easy to keep in touch today through LinkedIn, through text, regular check-ins, sharing articles. So once you've found somebody and you know someday you'll want to possibly use them in your company, stay in touch. Ensure you have a solid compensation strategy in place. Make sure you know what the market is paying so that you can be competitive. And align yourself with universities by supporting competitions, scholarships, initiatives, join conferences, present, join professional associations. I think the candidate experience can't be overstated. With social media being what it is today, if you have a rotten candidate experience, you can be sure you're going to end up on Glassdoor. I don't know how many of you know about Glassdoor, but it can do a lot to destroy your brand very quickly. So make sure that you treat those candidates like gold, because there's a lot of other people looking for them too, and there's a lot of choice out there today. When organizations need to acquire talent, they have three options. They can buy talent, they can build talent, or they can borrow talent. You can buy talent by hiring somebody. You can build talent by developing or skilling up an existing employee, or you can borrow talent by engaging the services of consultants, temporary agencies, and contractors. Of course, there are disadvantages to each and advantages to each option. Organizations with limited time or talent might not be able to build talent. Companies with limited budgets might not be able to buy the talent that they need. As you grow your company, you should start planning your pipeline and how you're going to get where you need to go. Likely you will use, as we have, a combination of all three strategies. With the tools in place today, you should always be working on your pipeline. Building. Organizations that focus on building talent can concentrate on building the skills and experience they need. Building talent can be expensive than buying it, and it can be great for employee morale. Employees want to know that the organization is willing to invest in their success. They like to see that opportunities to grow exist in their organization. On the downside, building talent can take a while. You might not have the time. You need to decide what you need up front. We have had many successful build stories. For instance, several of our past co-ops hold a variety of leadership positions at Baylis today. Buying. One of the most obvious advantages of hiring talent from the outside is that you can bring in skills and experience not currently within your organization. At Baylis, as we have grown, we brought talent we needed with the depth or expertise that was not available within the company. For example, we needed legal resources and we did not have them in-house, so we hired them. We also needed people with more other company experience. A good example of this is in our sales team. The majority of our sales are based in the US, and we needed a seasoned US-based sales leader to improve the effectiveness of our team and somebody who really understood the market. That proved to be very successful. Also, the new ideas, skills that are brought to the table when you buy talent is really helpful. You may need to borrow. Many organizations, regardless of size, have a need for specialized skills, but maybe they don't need them all the time. Or it's very expensive just to hire somebody for a specialized need. Instead of hiring full-time employees, you can make use of contractors and consultants. Borrow talent when you need it. An example where we do that at Baylis is in our regulatory department. With different requirements across the world for selling our products, it's much easier to use a consultant to help us navigate those markets than it is to hire an employee to help us there. As you saw earlier, every department has grown to some extent and the necessary talent added to help us meet our business needs. We have done this by using both the build and buy strategy. We started off with a lot of people in generalist roles. So for example, in HR, when I started, we had 5 employees and everybody did a little bit of everything. And now we have distinct functions within HR. Intellectual property now includes legal. Engineering has 3 distinct functions, and these are even broken down further in each function. R&D, quality and process engineering. Regulatory affairs now includes scientific affairs. Accounting now includes tax planning, financial planning, analysis, and sales from 30 in North America to 85 and 10 in Europe, 4 in Canada. And marketing has expanded from med ed and product management to biomedical communications. And now we're really working on our digital communications. And IT, we once had 3 people, now we have over 10, including developers and network engineers. So as you can see, we had a real buy strategy over the last few years, and we continue to hire. But before you employ your talent strategies, you need to build your brand. In order to find great employees, you need to ensure you can articulate what your why is. The stronger you can articulate that, the more impact you will have as an employer. Many of our applicants tell us they were drawn to us because of what we do and what they have seen online about our company. They are compelled by the culture we portray, and especially by our mission, improving the lives of patients around the world. make sure you build your why and your strategy, both short-term and long-term. I'd like to share an example of where the strong why really made an impact. A few years ago, our VP of Operations changed the dialogue around production expectations. Rather than focusing on how many products the team needed to make each day, she asked them to think about how many patients they would serve each day by the products they made. This may sound really simple, but the impact was huge. It really built the connection between the work our production team members did every day, assembling products, to the patients that were benefiting from their efforts. It connected them to their why at Baylis. While far removed from the actual patient, they could visualize who they were making the products for. We have reinforced our why with employees at our annual general meetings as well by bringing real patient stories to employees. It creates a lot of pride amongst the team. A great read on this topic is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. The diagram here is all his. I can't take credit for it, and it's called The Golden Circle. I encourage you to read his book if you haven't already done so. Now I'll share a bit about our talent journey and strategy over the last 5 years. Initially, we had no dedicated recruiters. As I had mentioned earlier, everyone on the team did some recruiting. That wasn't very effective, so we decided to create a talent function. Initially, we had one dedicated talent advisor, and today we have a team of 5. Then we started working on our brand. As I am sure you know, today's job seekers will do a lot of research on your company before applying. You need to constantly work on building your brand, and you need to have a compelling story to tell. We did this in several ways. We enhanced our virtual footprint. We utilized all the features that LinkedIn recruiter licenses provide. We improved our applicant tracking system. Today we use JobVite. We used the Muse to host our careers page, and this included videos of actual employees and jobs we often recruited for, and a variety of photos that show the Baylis team in action. It also allowed us to showcase our diversity. One interesting strategy we piloted, and that is still in place today, that really helped attract employees, was putting in place an employee shuttle. We had many employees who lived downtown Toronto with no cars, and they would commute to work, but the last 5 kilometers were time consuming. So now the shuttle delivers employees to and from Kipling Station a few times a day. I believe it has made a difference in attracting and retaining our employees, and it's also a great way to advertise our brand. We've also applied for external recognition through earning the Best Managed designation earlier this year, an employee recommended workplace. Employees are looking for what a company is doing and what makes them different from others, and all these items help us. So we talked about building your why. Another way to put it is building a strong value proposition. As discussed earlier, you need to be able to articulate what your why is. Ask yourself, why would someone want to work for you? What's in it for them? What sets you apart from someone else? What have you been recognized for? What kind of workplace, culture, and environment can you offer? Can you provide learning and development opportunities for employees? People want that today. They want career growth. They want to know what their roles are. They want clarity, and they want community. Can you provide those things to them? And also give your employees a voice. We've been using the Gallup survey for the last 3 years, and it's helped us improve employee engagement by focusing on areas that employees had identified were areas of improvement. And again, there's so many other strategies out there you can work. Co-op programs are really important to our strategy. One year we hired over 52 co-op students. Many of those students become full-time employees. Now we changed our strategy slightly to focus on PEY students. That way we have them for a year. There's not as much administration. We can train them up and they can add a lot more value than an employee for 4 months. And it also gives us really good insight to say, is this somebody we want to bring on full-time? We've also had success finding talent abroad. We couldn't find certain type of process engineer in Canada, but we found them in Ireland. Right now we have about 17 Irish employees, most of them who are working on becoming Canadian citizens. So that's been a great source of talent. Employee referrals are another great source of talent. Leveraging social media, sharing stories is another great way to attract talent. And again, applicant tracking system is key. It might sound really boring, but if you make it easy for employees to apply to your company, you're going to have a lot more success. If you frustrate them with having to fill out all kinds of forms and go through all kinds of hoops, you're going to lose them. And again, build connections with universities, professional organizations, consortiums, scholarships, sponsorships. I know several of our leaders belong to different groups, and the value from hearing what other companies are doing is immense. This project, Ventilators for Canadians, is a good example of how we have employed all three strategies, build, buy, and borrow, but especially the borrow strategy. In April, Baylis was asked to support a consortium in manufacturing ventilators due to the need created by the pandemic. We had to scale up rapidly, 250 employees in about 6 weeks, and we had to continue to ensure we had the talent in place throughout to manufacture these ventilators. And attrition is generally higher in temporary work. We worked with a couple of temporary staffing agencies to bring in the employees we need, and we ensured we treated these employees the same as we would treat our own employees. We also used it, and are continuing to use it, as an opportunity to build skills and experience with our existing employees. And as the project winds down, we likely will have several employees that we can buy or hire into our core business. We're so proud of all of those involved in making this happen and have delivered over half the ventilators to the Canadian government at this time. This project has also been a huge point of pride with our employees, again, reinforcing our why. So in closing, I just want to hit on some key points. Know your why, build your network, stay current in your field, join professional groups, present at conferences, build your strategy, have informational interviews, and use social media channels. I could talk about this a lot longer, but I think my time is up. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
That's great, Deborah. Thanks for that overview and that summary. Are you able to stick around to the end of the session? If we could, I prefer, so we can have a bit of a roundtable discussion.
Yes.
That'd be great. Okay, so I'm gonna. I think we're gonna go through the 3 talks then, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for interactions amongst our 3 presenters. So in the meanwhile, if people have questions that they need to get written down, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll come back to them at the end of the session. Okay, so as our second speaker today, we've got Jane DeRoche, who is the Innovation Manager for New Ventures at Innovate Calgary and the University of Calgary. I mean, I guess it's probably a year ago now, the Medventions program, with the Strategic Innovation Fund opportunity, we saw an opportunity to reach out and grow our connections across the country, and we were looking for partners in other provinces, and we found a fantastic partner in Calgary, and particularly through Innovate Calgary, and we actually managed to, in the era of COVID, actually launch a first team in Calgary and basically get some experience going through that. So we're really pleased today to have one of the key people in helping to make that all move forward, Jane. As she's the Innovation Manager for Life Sciences Innovation Hub New Ventures Program. She's helped advance life sciences startup fellows through their respective development phases by coordinating strategic guidance and training, managing key project and commercialization milestones, and connecting teams with local businesses. And so we're going to ask her today to talk a little bit about the experience of developing kind of Medventions Calgary. Jane?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction. So I'll just pull out my screen here, and hopefully you guys can confirm that you're seeing.
I can see you. Now if you can put it in slideshow mode.
Yeah, let's just make sure that nobody can see my sheets.
I can see it right now. There, now you're in slideshow.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, still good?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. No, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and a ton of suspense. So it's fantastic for those of you who have been able to pull your attention away from all of that and listen to what I've got to chat about on the subject of Medventions here in Calgary. So thanks for the introduction, Dr. Wright. That's fantastic. So I think, what I wanted to talk today was a program that you know, many folks on the call will recognize. It was initially conceived at Sunnybrook, and they rolled their first cohort of trainees out in the fall of 2016, as I understand. And since then, you know, the program has gained a ton of momentum, and it continues to accumulate some important successes, including the one that lots of people like to ask questions about, which is, you know, how many patents have been filed. And at last count, we had at least 6 that were going through various jurisdictions. So, you know, on the technical side, on the business development and commercialization side, that's something to be very proud of. You know, and like was mentioned, so we've you know, Sunnybrook has big plans to leverage those successes and continue to grow the program and expand it across the country. And we're really excited that, you know, we're here in Calgary, that we get to be the first. We were the first of what hopefully will be many expansion sites across Canada. And I'm just going to tell you sort of what our experience has been like, and some opportunities and challenges. But first, I think I'll maybe give sort of a short history, just to provide some context for why it's such an important part of the training landscape. Like I said, I'll talk about our experience in Calgary for the first part of the program, which we were extremely fortunate to be able to at least get started and through the clinical part of the program before, you know, COVID blew our world wide open. But also, you know, there's some challenges, of course, COVID being the first of them, but opportunities, of course, as well, for Medventions in Calgary and in other places. And then, yeah, so I think I also have an opportunity to plug a few programs that we're working on here in Calgary that sort of flesh out, you know, the part of the landscape of medtech technology locally here. So, so really, I mean, we see the Medventions program first and foremost as a training opportunity. You know, there's lots of opportunity as well on the business development side to, you know, to develop technologies that will hopefully go on to have commercial success. But I think, you know, one of the themes today has been that you know, if we do well with people, we will do well with technology. And so I think I'll focus more on you know, the training side of the program. And really, you know, the evolution of Medventions and other similar programs like it, you know, they exist in response to a gap in, you know, technical training, really, where students, so I have a mechanical engineering background, you know, I did grad work in biomedical engineering beyond that. And, you know, I think in a lot of my experience sort of developing and running programs, students are really well trained in how to solve problems, you know, especially engineers, especially those folks who've come through technical training programs. But they really, they lack the training in the background to understand, you know, how that problem sort of fits in the context of the bigger picture. And you know, processes or skills on how to identify which are good problems to solve, and not going down, you know, rabbit holes of solving problems that not enough people have, for example. So what we really identified in terms of a need is, you know, there's a gap, there's an opportunity for better training to develop, you know, folks with a deep understanding of how to identify and also how to validate which problems are worth solving and why. And so our previous speaker, Deborah, mentioned Simon Sinek, and I love that concept is really just understanding the why first. It's a little bit, you know, maybe used differently in a technical, you know, a sort of design methodology sense than it might be in a business development sense, but certainly why needs to be central to you know, it needs to precede the how and the what, let's say. And so what we're aiming to do, you know, here in Calgary, with guidance from folks at Sunnybrook is to provide a structured and experiential training opportunity for folks to learn medical device innovation. And we really deliberately put a strong focus on the clinical needs identification and validation. And so what we're trying to avoid is, you know, a situation where someone goes on to develop a hammer and then has to go finding themselves a nail. So, so central to that, you know, we sort of look at this as you know, in the context of sort of 4 core values for the program. And so what we're aiming to offer is a program that's experiential. So, you know, within the financial and time constraints of the program itself, the 4 months that we have to work with, and the 4 trainees who who make it through the evaluation and are onboarded into the program, what we want to deliver is as real world as we can of a framework for training. It also needs to be needs centered. So, because of these time and financial constraints, mostly we've got a very short time period with which to do as much as we can. And so deliberately we focus on really early stage technology innovation. And so by far the most unique and meaningful part, of the training experience in our view and in the view of the trainees who have gone through our program is the clinical immersion component. And so I'll talk about sort of a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of how the program runs in a few minutes here, but really the clinical immersion is an opportunity where trainees, they participate in direct observation of clinical workflow. And this is where the opportunities originate. They're from direct observations of pain points in the health system and design challenges and bottlenecks and things like that, experienced by clinicians and healthcare providers and patients themselves. So it's also going to be autonomous. So, in the training sense, it's sort of a friendly environment in which trainees can fail. So, we really, it's sort of medium touch, if you will. So the, project decisions and major directions need to be made by the trainees themselves. And of course, we're here to guide them. But, if they can fail fast in this sort of low risk environment and then learn from those experiences, then that's a success in our mind. And then finally, we want it to be collaborative. So, it relies extensively on cross collaboration from, most importantly, the clinicians and the clinical department, and then folks within the university and in our key university partners. So programmatically, we can think of things as this sort of triad with, like I said before, the clinical immersion experience. So this is where our team of 4 interns actually has an opportunity to shadow clinicians. And so essentially what they do is they scrub in and participate sort of as a fly on the wall in a number of different clinical environments, and then have conversations with the key stakeholders about sort of what happened and where the opportunities for innovation might be from those different experiences. And then there's the talent development or skills development and strategic connections. And this is where the human component really comes in. And so back in the olden days when like real life events were a real thing and we were allowed to do classroom-based kinds of things, then that was in-person networking, classroom-based sort of training and learning was central to that piece. Of course, everything has moved on to virtual experiences right now, and that seems to be probably the way of the future. And so we're evolving the program to include those kinds of things as well. And then the team design project, which is really what I think folks from a technical background, this is what there's a magnetism to sort of pull into doing the design too early. I think that's a big reason for why we kind of run into problems of solutions looking for a problem. But there is a little bit of time to actually do sort of what the engineers and the technical folks would call the fun stuff. Of course, in collaboration with other partners. And so I'll give you a little sense here of the timeline. So the first cohort that we ran through was in the winter term of 2020. So early this year, like I said, we were lucky enough to start in January and go through the clinical shadowing sort of part of the program. And it was really serendipitous, to be honest, that, sort of middle of February as the clinical shadowing component of the program was sort of tailing off. The trainees were really fortunate to be able to get through the clinic before COVID made that essentially impossible in the spring. And so sort of overlapping that a little bit is a problem analysis. And this is where it, some of the training comes in really giving some guidance on sort of how to evaluate whether a clinical problem or a clinical observation is a big enough problem for enough people, and enough of a problem that the payers somebody will pay to solve it. And then there's this tiny little bit of time left at the end to do some design build test cycles, really the output in all reality at the end of the 4 months is, proof of concept sort of level, sometimes even just a paper prototype, but it's a prototype or certainly early stage ideation for a well-validated need is the objective. So I'll just throw up a slide of our trainees from our first cohort. So we had a pretty quick application process, pretty rapid recruitment, but we were able to pull together an outstanding team of that included two graduate students, one in computer science, one in biomedical engineering with an electrical engineering background. We actually, for this cohort, recruited a senior undergrad, and as well as a research staff. So in Calgary, we have a medical school program that is an accelerated program. It's only 3 years. So that was a little bit of a challenge with our first cohort, was to recruit folks with a medical training background, but Dominic filled that role and he did an outstanding job. He had a really interesting kind of breadth of experience in the hospital, and he brought a lot to the group. I'm just seeing chats come in, but I don't think they're questions for me, so that's no problem. We'll just save, if you don't mind, we'll just save the questions till the end, because I can't actually see them popping up on my screen. So. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the clinical immersion part of the program was a really key component. It was the highlight. Certainly, our team had, the vast majority of them had very limited experience actually in the hospital, and we were able to provide for them a fantastic experience. So I myself, I certainly can't take credit for this part at all. So I worked with a postdoc from the Department of Medical Physics, Dr. Elizabeth Watt, and she was fantastic. So she was the clinical coordinator for the program. She made connections with physicians and residents and nurses and clinical scientists and machinists and engineers and electronic service specialists and radiation therapists and patients and, across the gamut really of the key stakeholders for us. So I should say that the partnership that evolved at the University of Calgary on the clinical side was between the Department of Medical Physics at the Tom Baker Cancer Center. So because of how the funding worked and the target areas for the Strategic Innovation Fund grant that covers the program costs here, we're looking to do innovations in the area of image guided therapeutics. And so it was a really great natural fit that Elisa Parks, so the original sort of handshake between Sunnybrook and the University of Calgary, who brought the program through the Hunter Hub at that time, had some connections in the area, and it was a great transition and a great fit. And so the clinical immersion experience was fantastic. You can read all of the different types of procedures and cases that the team was able to observe in about 4.5 or 5 weeks primarily. So like I said, right before COVID was really kind of shutting everything down. They were, I think they had to cancel observations in a couple of repeat cases that they wanted to see more than once during that time. But we were really lucky that they were able to have this really extensive clinical immersion experience. And so without giving too much away about sort of where where they're at and the type of project that they're in, one of the important outputs that the team received a lot of training and quite a bit of focus on is is this concept of having a validated clinical need. So we want to identify unmet clinical needs and then do some analysis to see whether there's a market opportunity for that clinical need. And so the one that they came up with was that they wanted to find a way to optimize bladder filling prior to radiation therapy for these pelvic kinds of cancers, to ensure that the bladder is within the guidelines for safe treatment of to plan and treat consistently while minimizing cone beam CT scans within a single appointment. So that's a mouthful, I get it. But essentially what that derives from is that, that one of the great challenges in radiation therapy is to, nuke a cancer and preserve the healthy tissue surrounding that cancer. And so one of the sort of methods that that clinicians will use is to use the bladder to sort of push the healthy tissue out of the way. But bladder filling itself has some of its own challenges, and so the team was looking for a solution to try and normalize bladder filling, essentially, to make those treatments more consistent. And they continue to work on their solution, but very broadly speaking, without giving away too much of the secret sauce, what they're looking to do is to develop this sort of hardware software sort of combined solution to track bladder filling prior to radiation therapy treatment, so that patients can come into the clinic with a more consistently full bladder, so that their healthy tissues are sort of where the radiation therapists expect them to be. And like I said, so they're continuing to work on this project alongside their various other commitments. They were able to secure some follow-on funding and program support through a program here in Calgary called the Platform Calgary Summer Incubator Program. So they got some additional training and funding to keep going with that. Some of their sort of near-term milestones, they're continuing to iterate their prototype. They've got some early collaborations in the works with some clinical partners, some in Alberta, some in other parts of the country. And then here at Innovate Calgary now, they're working with some mentors in our networks to look at developing IP and regulatory strategy for their company. And so, that's sort of the future of that team, specifically looking more broadly at the future of Medventions in Calgary. There's various challenges and opportunities, and like virtually probably everywhere in the world right now, the biggest challenge is COVID. And so, we're really excited to continue to run the program here. We had a number of conversations about sort of how to evolve the program in the context of COVID, and whether there were other models that we could deliver, maybe combining some virtual sort of components. Ultimately, what we came to the decision in the near term, certainly for running a program sort of in the next 6 months or so, is that our value proposition essentially for the program, it really rests on the clinical immersion experience, and I think there's probably opportunity for some successes in the virtual model, but we just didn't quite feel like those were quite enough to make the program as successful as we really wanted to. So we put the brakes on a little bit. We're aiming for a September cohort, a September of fall of next year. So for the Medventions program itself, but I think beyond that, the model is to me an extremely powerful and accessible model for delivery to other types of areas. So we've got lots of, we've got lots of ideas, lots of programs in the works here at Innovate Calgary in the medtech space, but in other areas of innovation as well. So, clean tech and digital health and other kinds of agriculture as well. And so I think, from a perspective of a repeatable training model, I think it's incredibly powerful. And we just haven't really quite been able to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's on any of those yet. So I've got just a few minutes here that I just wanted to plug a couple more programs that are available in Calgary before I have to sort of close things off. One is the Life Science Fellowship. So this is a 2-year, this is a up to $200,000 grant. Essentially, it's basically grant funding. I'm heavily involved with this program right now. We've got 8 trainees in the cohorts that are going through. We're just in the final stages of trying to onboard 6 more. So what basically this program provides startup funding for folks who have you know, some early innovations in the life sciences area. So there's some financial support, there's some infrastructure and HR support, and then there's some professional development and you know, more experiential learning support within that fellowship. And so the idea is to bring fellows in, you know, expand the team in their company, expand their IP portfolio, process regulatory, and really at the end of the day, get them ready for sophisticated investors to invest in their companies. One example of that would be UCEED. So another really exciting program here in Calgary is UCEED. So we just launched UCEED in July. And it's a program with, you know, that aims to make sort of pre-seed and seed stage investments in companies in the Calgary community. It's equity-based financing, but it's also you know, mentorship and support in the people, which, you know, is the theme of what we're doing today. So that's sort of like, if you think of, I haven't put them in a perfect order here, but if you think of sort of different stages of the pipeline, this might be, you know, sort of a targeted milestone or targeted endpoint. That Medventions might be kind of more toward the inlet, with the fellowship somewhere in between. The last one I want to talk about, this is really cool. So this is directed at undergrads from the Haskayne School of Business here. It's a UCEED sort of, it's based on the UCEED model, but it's run by students. So essentially it brings business students in to work alongside other partners at UCEED. To you know, learn about due diligence essentially, and then to work together to vet some companies and be, you know, heavily directly involved in making these investments. So with that, I apologize, I've gone 2 minutes more than I meant to, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk. There's a ton of people that I want to thank. Of course, and you know, there's some funding resources and others. Sunnybrook, I mean, the initial conception of the program was yours, and so I just appreciate you know, being folded into what I know will be many successes moving along. And then lastly, I'll just leave my own contact. There's a few web links there for folks who are interested in learning more about the different fellowships and UCEED. My email is on that last slide, and I'm sure that it'll get sent around with the recordings and other things as well. So thank you. That's all I have for now.
That's great, Jane. Thank you so much. I think that's kind of given us a good bookend from the industry perspective and the academic training perspective. And again, hopefully you can stick around for a roundtable, because I think we're going to have some good perspectives amongst the three of you in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, fantastic. Happy to do that.
Yeah, and actually, maybe if you want to put some of those, some of your contact information into the chat, just post it to all attendees that way. It'll be also accessible. But yes, I think some people are asking, and we'll repost. The recordings will be available on the Medventions YouTube channel later on. Okay, so before we get to that roundtable discussion, if I can get you to unshare your screen, and we'll go to the final speaker. As I say, we've kind of seen the trainer side and the HR side. I think as our last speaker is actually kind of a nice way to wrap up the day. In terms of talks, is Will Jones, who is also actually from Baylis, which shows you the great opportunities to work at Baylis. But he's going to give you a bit of a perspective of somebody who's actually gone through the process from the academic to all through to the working at the companies and the like. And actually, he's also been a great friend of the Medventions program. He was basically there with us at the beginning as we tried to set this whole process up 7 years ago. And I see in the meantime, he's now got a 2-year-old daughter, so he's been busy. He's a professional engineer with a master's in business from the Schulich School of Business. He's focused on finding ways to continually build Canada's capacity to design, develop, and commercialize medical devices. And we look forward to your story of a journey from the wind tunnel to the cath lab. Will?
Great, thanks, Graham. I just need to share my screen here. Apologize, 1 second. There we go, and I'll just make it large.
Okay, yeah.
Can you see the full version or just the?
You're in presenter mode now, so you want to swap presenter mode and slideshow mode.
here's what I'll do. Great, thanks for bearing with me, everyone. Thanks for welcoming me here, a journey from the wind tunnel to the cath lab. My name is Will Jones. There's my Twitter handle if you want to reach out to me. LinkedIn, please reach out to me if you want. I love getting messages from people and trying to help wherever I can with medical device, just career advice, or ways to start to break into the field. I graduated into the first recession that I've experienced, the 08 recession, and I know how tough things can be, especially at this time. So please do reach out. I do have some bandwidth, but not a huge amount, but I will get to you, and I'd love to help wherever I can. I am a product manager at Baylis Medical, and I've been there for about just shy of 2 years, coming up in 2 years. I want to take some time to say thank you for taking a chance on me to these following people who really have set the career trajectory for me. I'm going to touch upon it, but I didn't even know this whole industry existed. So I appreciate it. Before I get into the talk, I do want to talk about where I came from. So grew up in Niagara Falls, single parent with 2 brothers. My mom was a secretary. She's actually a widow. So in 1986, she's been a widow since. My dad was a millwright at GM, your standard family. 1993, my mom started working, and I saw, the talks earlier about fair salaries, fair opportunity, all that. And, my mom made just below the median salary for women, which was $19,000 per year in 1993. So, there's ways for us to go, and I'm a big advocate of that. So I just wanted to make note of that. But it's really shaped my perspective on life, in that discipline and education go a long way. And education is the greatest way to empower others. So talks like this, or however I can share my knowledge, I love to help further education. And this is just, people will say, you're born in Niagara Falls. What do you mean? This is roughly my hometown, my little house there, and it's about a 20-minute walk. I'm gonna, instead of going chronologically in sort of the order of different careers and different touch points I had with med devices, I just want to talk about some key themes. So resilience is one of them, whether you're joining a startup or you're joining a big company, and it's your first foray into the world of med device. Resilience is an important trait to have. And innovation and protocol. Often we talk about medical devices or drugs, but honestly, I'm going to talk on 2 different protocols, innovations and protocol, that have changed the course of my life. So at my high school, 2004, for that time, very innovative. They had this program where teachers that knew CPR, AED usage, other things, they would be called, Mrs. Cross to this room because a student fainted or things like that. And so I had a cardiac arrest at age 17. I was sitting in class, unexpected, unknown. They still don't know why it occurred. But you can see the ECG strip here from when they shocked me. They still need to shock me a few more times to get back to a more regular rhythm. But this was really my first foray into medical devices. And at that time, that innovation in the protocol saved my life. Not a medical device necessarily. Eventually it did, but it was the protocol that changed the way that school was run. And so there's ways to create change within protocol, which is very important. And at that time, I thought only physicians made medical devices, probably until about I was 25 years old when I met Dr. Courtney and Dr. Wright and Dr. Strauss. I thought physicians made it, and I didn't think there's engineers or anything. So I went off to go do aerospace engineering. So within 5 months of losing some memory, losing some of my fitness capabilities, I was going to class and trying to figure out what a derivative was when all my colleagues were well past that. Now live with an ICD, Medtronic Protecta XT-VR in my chest, coming up on year 9 of probably 10 of its life. So I'll go in soon for a 1-day turnaround procedure to get that gen change. But right now there's an 8.6 French lead that goes into my right ventricle. And funny enough, when I was working at Canavi, I got to meet the lead engineer who designed that lead, and we were chatting for a bit, and he said it's the best lead on the market. Of course he said that. Community is another key aspect of my life, and especially around medical devices and the medical device industry. So when you think of community, you think your geographic community, but medtech is important. You look at all the names on the attendees right now, and I recognize quite a few, and I see a lot of new ones, which is great. And I hope we stay a close community, because I think that's what's really going to help grow this industry in Canada. And it's a really small industry as well, but we are growing. And since I first got perspective on it in 2013, there's so many more companies that are out there, which is fantastic to see. I graduated into the recession in 08, as I mentioned. It's tough in aerospace at that time, so I thought I need to do more for my community, and I started volunteering with the Heart and Stroke Foundation. All the way I was just doing data input. Donations come in, and I would just spend some time, stop applying for jobs, and I would go put some data entry into for donations that were coming in. And eventually it just led to opportunities. And so when you volunteer, you get different opportunities that get thrown to you. I got to meet, Will Kate, the Prime Minister of the time, and the Governor General of the time. I got to meet, federal politicians, provincial politicians, and lobby them to get AEDs in every public building. Got to meet with CEOs, right? So there's all these different things that come up with volunteering, and networking for your career, and just mentorships throughout your career. So it's important to look to different organizations like Heart and Stroke or other ones that are out there. And it also led to an opportunity to co-found the Young Leaders Program about 3 or 4 years ago, where I wanted to do more than what I was doing with the Heart and Stroke Foundation. And I recognized that there was others my age cohort that wanted to. So I said, hey, let's build this program. We'll learn more about heart and stroke. We'll get more young people involved, and get them aware of heart disease and stroke at this age, so that we can make change long term and help drive more research and get closer to the research that Heart and Stroke invests in. And I just wanted to put in a picture here. I got to meet Dr. Tony Graham, who basically just brought CPR to Canada, and I'm a byproduct of all of his hard work throughout this industry. So it's someone said earlier, it's standing on the shoulders of giants. I definitely stand on a few of these giant shoulders that exist in this community. I did want to touch upon my time as an aerospace engineer for just a few minutes. I worked as an aerospace engineer at a company called Davis. We made exhaust tailpipes. You can see one here that go onto the back of helicopters. This V-22 Osprey was actually one of the last projects I worked on. And basically you had this baseline exhaust system, and then you built a series of rings, a new exhaust system that just lowered the heat signature. So instead of being red, it would be green here. And so missiles couldn't find them. So it's about finding signal within the noise. What's important with this is, you don't always get that med tech career out of school. And at some time you got to pay the bills, so you get some job, but it's about finding the parallels between the industries, right? So I learned a lot about V&V, verification and validation, design engineering, manufacturing engineering, process engineering, taking requirements from a customer and all the way through to delivery for Fortune 500 VPs, et cetera. And so I just wanted to touch on that. A lot of people reach out to me and say, I work in X industry or this industry. I don't know if I can break in. And it's just about positioning yourself so that you have parallels to show. And it's about educating yourself on what those parallels might be. Opportunity is another topic I want to talk about. So at one point I was volunteering with Pathways to Education, and I thought, I want to do more than I'm doing in this wind tunnel and on these helicopters. So I went to do an MBA at Schulich, and that's where I met Dr. Courtney, Dr. Strauss, and Dr. Wright. And yeah, this was grand. This was, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. And what a great opportunity. When I say opportunity, a lot of my colleagues were going to do consulting work or finance jobs down on Bay Street. And then here's me going over to Sunnybrook to work on some kind of medical technology. We're still sort of sorting things out and figuring it all out. And people probably thought I was crazy, but it's about being open to opportunity and open to taking a jump early in your career. And then this is part of the research I did. Canada punches its weight in higher education R&D spending, science and engineering degrees, scientific publications. Where we fall a bit flat is on some of the patents, some venture capital sophistication and willingness to fit within the timeline of investing in a med tech idea and startup, which takes, you know, a 10-year horizon, and their fund needs a 7-year return, or, you know, government funding in R&D and business funding in R&D. So it's not just a silver bullet that's going to solve the solution, and it's going to be a few different areas that we need to pull the levers on and help drive more adoption and more commercialization of medical technology in Canada. And so with that, you know, I got a great foray into what the med device industry was in Canada, and Conavi was a great company. You know, Dr. Courtney reached out to me, and I saw it as a great opportunity to experience growth. So I had a full-time job offer with Bombardier in front of me, and I got the call, and I said, no, I gotta go take this fun ride over here. And so what's great about startups and scale-ups is that honestly, you can punch decades of knowledge and growth into just only a few short time period. So I went from V&V engineer, R&D project manager, global product manager, met a lot of great people, just really dedicated to the company, the products, and furthering patient care. So be open to opportunity, and when you're at a company like that's a young startup and moving up to scale up, be open to all the different opportunities that are going to come with it. You know, I remember taking the garbage out one day, and then later that day having a 2-hour meeting with globally recognized cardiologists about how the devices are going to change the care of patients. And so, you know, be open to opportunity and have an optimistic outlook. I apologize, I'm getting over sickness, so I'm a little congested here, but I'll keep going here. And now I'm at Baylis Medical, and it's been a fantastic ride so far. I'm really enjoying it. And it's really about execution here. You know, Baylis is doing well. There's a lot of portfolio of products that are out there, and you know, it's at the bringing superior products to the clinical edge of advancing the field. So we work with great people like Professor Ernst, who's looking at zero fluoro transeptal access. And you know, there's a handful of people out there looking to reduce fluoro fully from their transeptal access. And in the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be a huge trend that will really change as a lot of the younger generation turns over, and we further learn the effects of fluoroscopy. I get to be part of educational events, world-class innovation centers and education, and mingling with physicians and conferences as well. And so really working with sort of the top of the top and learning from them, and working with sales organizations in the US, Japan, Europe, Canada, really, you know, soaking in a lot of information. And within Baylis, there's a lot of great different people in different departments. I'm learning so much, just reaching across my level to go, hey, tell me more about process engineering, and really furthering my knowledge in that way. And that's what, you know, companies like Baylis at that size can really help drive for your career. And then I do want to talk about perspective and how you can change and be open to new ideas and thoughts out there. So I'm not sure, you know, raise your hand on your computer if you think how many times you might have heard congenital cytomegalovirus, CCMV. I'm going to go to the next slide and come back to that one, but you know, it's the #1 cause in congenital disability, and 1 in 15 Canadians have heard of it. I'm going to reread that again. It's the #1 cause of congenital disability, and only 1 in 15 Canadians have heard of it. We've all heard of Zika. We've all heard of COVID. Congenital cytomegalovirus is one that should really be in the top of our minds. 1 in 200 Canadian infants infected with CMV during pregnancy. That means 925 babies are born with it, and roughly 10–15% show symptoms at birth, which vary from mainly hearing loss permanently to, you know, developmental delay, whether it's muscle tone or brain. Lower cases, it's blindness, cerebral palsy, and sometimes even death. And a vaccine's required. It's in, you know, things are in development, but really it's a messaging problem. So avoid sharing saliva with toddlers. It's usually your second child who picks up this virus because they're at daycare, and you come home and you give them a kiss goodnight. So it'll be interesting to see how COVID interacts with this, in the sense that we're a lot more cognizant of our hand washing and keep our hands away from our mouth. and avoiding saliva. But what's interesting is we won't have good data to research to see if the CCMV goes down because we're not tracking it. Maybe in Ontario we are, but not other provinces as closely. So it's really interesting to hear about this, and I just wanted to spend a little minute to do a PSA on it. But it is detectable at birth. There are treatments available if caught early. Effective screening tests exist, and screening is very affordable with cost savings for the entire system and also for society. So let me go back to here. This is a protocol innovation. Again, you know, it's not just medical devices that can really change patients' lives. There's a couple of physicians and organizations. CMV Canada is a great one. You know, it's almost like a startup in a way that the past year it's really accelerated, and in the next few years it's really going to keep growing and growing. I'm part of it as a parent advisory council to help with other parents whose child are diagnosed with CCMV, and provide new ideas on, you know, the clinical needs or the post-care needs of what we could use to help the treatment of this and living with this. So a few physicians in this organization and some scientists said, hey, there's a blood screen that's, you know, a blood prick done on your newborn, and on day one, once they're born, and it tests against 20 different viruses out there. And so they tacked on this other test for CCMV in addition to the newborn hearing screening. And so within 2 weeks, my daughter was found out to be profoundly deaf in her left ear, and despite treatment, the right ear went from severe to profound after about 6 months of life. But what it allowed for was early intervention. And so this person didn't go, this group of people didn't go, I'm going to create a whole new program, a whole new government agency. They said, hey, we're all already doing these different programs. How can we tack on this thing very quick, very cheaply, and very easily? And so there's innovation within protocol, which I think is hugely important to emphasize. So here's my daughter here on their first day of sound. So she was implanted with bilateral cochlear implants at 5 months, and they were turned on at 6 months just before Christmas 2 years ago. And there we are with the sound on, and then there's her roaming the halls of the cochlear implant program a few years ago at Sick Kids. At the time, I was really, you know, didn't know how to. I wanted to share this knowledge. So, you know, people, I never heard of this. No one in my circle heard of this. So I reached out to the Globe and Mail and said, hey, we need to do something on this to talk about what this program's doing. It's really changing lives. And then what's interesting with medical devices like cochlear implants is that you get them, but it doesn't mean you just hear automatically. You need to learn to hear. You need to learn to locate sound. And it takes a lot of work to do that. And so we also reach out to them, say, hey, it's been a year. Let's talk about what it's taken us as a family to get our daughter up to speed in hearing with these medical devices. So day 2 of her life, I read 30 million words. I don't even know how I came across it, but great book if you have a kid, basically from 0 to 3 years old. If you have, if your child is exposed to 30 million words, even though they don't know it at, you know, age 6 months or whatever, they hear the cadence of us speaking, and they pick that up. And the physician and scientists realized that, did studies that showed that child then goes on to have better social skills and better academic averages later in life. And so often, you know, you think lower income might, you know, that there might be effects for that. Where that comes in is that the parents aren't home because one's working a second job and they're not speaking as much at home, where sometimes that comes in. Or even, you know, high net worth people, they're too busy working and they go that way. So 30 million words really opened up my mind to, hey, we got to get this sound in right away. And that's what's great about this universal screening program, this protocol innovation, and these devices. And where are we at today? She's 2.5 years old. We've done 172 appointments, 4,561 books read at night, and quite a few twinkle, twinkle, little stars. And I can never turn one down whenever she says, I want to hear it. And it's just a daily reminder of how a medical device can change the world. And you know, I might have to reshare my screen here to make sure sound is shared. So 1 second when I do that, and I'm almost done, guys. Share my screen. So I'll play this little video here where she's she's pretty far along and she's learning a new sentence.
I want to go outside. I want to go outside.
I want to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me. So that's my daughter, 2.5 years old, picking up a sentence and reiterating it right away. She's deaf. She has bilateral cochlear implants. Just the magic of this device, but also the amount of effort in rehabilitation to get her up to that speed. Cochlear implants, in case you haven't seen them, this part goes into just under the skin. They shave off a bit of the skull, and then they put this tip into the cochlea, just right here. And so you can see you have 22, her version, the Nucleus 7 from Cochlear has 22 electrodes. So you can hear high frequency and low frequency. You can imagine for us, you have roughly 30,000 hairs, and you can hear a continuous wave of sound. For hers, they're sort of modulated into 22 buckets. But what's great is the human brain is so moldable at that age that the auditory nerve in some people can really piece it all together so that they don't hear, just like you and I, but they hear pretty close just to how you and I hear. So it's quite a phenomenal device. And basically it's commercial mics to reduce sound disturbance, but and pick up sound where it needs to. Sound processor, and then it transmits over to the receiver, and then it's a pulse generator that pulses electricity to the nerve. And then one thing I'm working on my own, I think I want my daughter to hear at school. You give teachers microphones, but those are expensive. So what are different ways? I'm living with every day I see clinical needs. So I'm working on just on my own for fun on Friday nights, Saturday nights, I'm reading clinical papers, teaching myself how to write some machine learning algorithms to transfer noise speech into the frequency domain, pick out some features and say, hey, let's amplify Papa's voice so that Francesca can then hear me. There's companies out there, there's people out there that are working on this, but I'm still going to keep working on it and see where I can go with it. I remember seeing someone's question early on about clinical need. I look at all of these headbands that I have here, keeping very expensive devices on a 2-year-old is a very difficult challenge. And so someone on Etsy just made these for $25, which holds exactly her Nucleus 7 device on the screen there, perfectly on her head. And because I have a girl, I got a few different designs to make her look good at her preschool. And just that alone, I think we purchased 30 times 25 times the number of cochlear implant users out there. There's a business right there, right? So it's about finding little niche needs that are out there. And a few parting thoughts that I hope you take away from my story through med device, whether it's volunteering, personal experience, or in a career, is what her otolaryngologist said to me after her surgery was, don't ever tell her what she can't do, let her show you what she can do. And the same applies to you when you're speaking about your own thoughts. I often tell myself, I'm not a coder. I've said that ever since I was in engineering and my mark at C++ wasn't as strong, but stop telling yourself that and have more belief and confidence in yourself. People ask me, what does it take to start a company? I'd say step one is having confidence and belief in your abilities and skills. And from there, other things fall into place. And don't get lost on someone else is commercializing that idea. It doesn't mean they're going to be first or better or capture the market. Sometimes you have a better customer service. You may not be technologically better, but you have a better go-to-market strategy. Maybe they're going with hardware and software, but you're coming with software only, and it'll be an easier way to get into the market. So just because someone else is commercializing that idea, you can still move forward with it, navigate the patent field, and have that belief and confidence in yourself. And thanks for everyone for having me on here today.
Thanks, Will. I don't think we could find a better spokesperson for medtech innovation with that, as you've shown again in your talk today. I'd like to invite all the speakers to turn their cameras on. And so then now kind of have a bit of a roundtable on the whole idea of training and getting the people that are needed to really grow this ecosystem. And And maybe I can just kind of start it off with, I think there's a general question about how do I get a job or network, and let me just kind of expand on that to really talk about, we talk about the various valleys of despair in companies, but I think there's the same thing happens in talent development. Effectively, I think Jane's on the front end. We get people excited about this whole idea of entrepreneurship, but then they get to the end of their Medventions fellowship and they're trying to figure out how to take the next step. And there seems to be a big gap between that and getting involved in a company. And I imagine from Deborah's perspective as well, when you're looking for talent, trying to kind of work with these folks at a university who have this general education, but you want to kind of bring them in and get them excited and get them up to speed where they're kind of a strong contributor. But also, I guess, within companies, trying to keep people who want to be entrepreneurs engaged as entrepreneurs as part of a medical device innovation company. And so maybe I want to kind of let each of you comment on that challenge of going from, coming out of university and really getting involved, reaching down and kind of connecting those two areas. And how do you go from somebody who's got great ideas and wants to be part of things, or how does a company kind of keep people really creative and focusing on these sorts of things? Maybe I'll start with I'll start with Will to just kind of, because he's kind of lived that journey a little bit, and obviously he speaks very passionately about that process.
Sure. It's tough in COVID. I saw the question there about virtually. For me, I literally went to every event I could think of, right? And you just talk to people and put yourself out there. At the end of the day, you might have a few bad conversations or awkward ones, but you forget about it the next morning, so who cares, right? So it's about putting yourself out there. Reaching out to people on LinkedIn is one way to do it virtually, and you have to take it with an approach that you want to hear their story. It's not about you. It's about planting seeds and knowing that, hey, Dr. Courtney might not have a job for me right out of school, in my case, but, I built that relationship with him throughout my co-op. And I thought, one day I'd love to work at his company, and you don't push it too hard. You just sort of plant the seed, work hard, and show that person you're interested in what they're doing. That way, when the opportunity comes, they either might think of you, or when you reach out again and say, hey, look what I'm doing, they might see value in that and go, hey, why don't you come do it with us? That's one way to approach it.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Will. And maybe next, Jane, maybe get her to comment on how these folks get launched from the perspective of after they leave your training program. How do you connect them into these networks, and how do you help them kind of move their ideas ahead and or connect up with entrepreneurial companies?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks, Dr. Wright. I think one point I would make on that subject that sort of was brought up for me is that I think we need to sort of expand our idea of what a change maker actually is. And, the way that we sort of run our programs, especially when Medventions was positioned in the Hunter Hub, which is more sort of closely tied to the university. It's just sort of expanding that idea that, that not everybody that goes through these training programs is necessarily going to end up running a business. And, I think there's sort of a bit of a, Will, I think thank you for your presentation. Well, that was fantastic. It was really inspiring in a lot of ways. And one of the things that you touched on was that, we have these blocks of like, I'm a such and such, or I am not a such and such. And I think, when people think of entrepreneurial thinking as opposed to entrepreneurship, there might be a block in those folks who think, oh, well, I'm not creative enough to run, or I'm not, cut out for running a small business, and those roadblocks get set up right away. So I think it's just sort of broadening an idea of, entrepreneurship, I think was touched on. That's really important. And, these small changes, I think thinking about things as sort of evolutions, or these sort of smaller changes in practice, or in products or development or programming, that can actually make big impacts sort of in the long term, I think is really central to just bringing out the strengths in the folks that come through our program. In terms of making the handshakes, I think one of the challenges that Medventions has is exactly that, is that there's this tension between, the sort of technology development and the sort of human capital or talent or skills development. And that, you know, a lot of the folks who are great candidates to come through the program are not necessarily in a position to go on and be entrepreneurs in the really near term. And so the challenge is sort of, how do we carve out space for them to make that handshake, you know, in our case, for example, because there's a little bit of a gap between, you know, where a project can reasonably exit Medventions in terms of technology development and where it would need to enter some of these other programs. And I think there's probably a programming need that we can do a little bit better job of making that handshake. Often what it comes down to is the people, though, is that there's, you know, it requires sort of a critical mass of that internal team to be in a position to move it forward. And often that process is quite slow. So no answers, but yeah, I mean lots of fantastic points.
Thanks. And maybe I'll turn to Deborah now. And I know there's many aspects from the HR, you know, you've got many different talents you've got to grow up, but maybe just focusing a little bit on the kind of the entrepreneurial med tech folks that how do you kind of harness their energies within an existing company? How do you identify, engage them, get them kind of playing with the team? A lot of these folks are strong individuals and so forth. And
I think we really encourage people when we hire them to jump in, and if they see a need, to share it and to own it and share their ideas and get involved. Also, you might not be in the job that's your dream job when you start with us, but learn as much as you can from other people around you, so they get to know who you are. Have informational interviews, job shadow, just be visible. You know, don't wait for somebody to come to you. You need to start the conversation. And, you know, we have a lot of examples of people who joined us and, you know, for instance, one as an admin assistant, and she goes, I don't want to be this person, but I'm going to put my foot in the door and someday I'm going to go after what I really want to do, which is sales. And now she's one of our most successful sales reps. So while she might not be entrepreneurial, she sees the opportunity and made it happen. And her good work and efforts showed everybody what she was capable of. We also have patents that a lot of our employees develop here too. So if you're in engineering and you have a great idea, we have a patent program where you can be recognized for any patents that you've come up with while you're here. So depending on what your interest is, really work it when you're here.
Okay, I see another question in the box about a similar thing, advice on kind of entering the medtech pipeline. I think we've touched on that a little bit, but again, maybe Deborah, you can expand a little bit on how you reach, you know, how when you're recruiting into the program, particularly on the engineering side, going into the universities, how do you set up those connections? What are you looking for? How do people get your attention?
So we attend a lot of virtual job fairs. So before COVID, we got to meet a lot of people in person, our talent team. Now they're all virtual. But, you know, I just had actually somebody email me today saying, hey, I applied a couple of weeks ago and nobody's gotten back to me. And, you know, you might be annoyed on the one hand by getting those emails, but on the other hand, that shows me there's somebody who's really interested in working for us. So let's take it to the next step and follow up. A lot of people need to ask good questions too. They need to know about your company before they start asking you all kinds of questions. And I find that people who've done a lot of research and ask really intelligent questions are people that we're really interested in talking to. And, you know, even if you're not going to get the job, sometimes just asking for an informational interview is really important. Like, hey, I'm thinking about joining the company. Is there somebody I can talk to, whether it's a previous co-op or somebody in the company who was a co-op? It's just make those connections and, you know, put yourself out there a little bit. It might be uncomfortable, but what have you got to lose? It's kind of like Will said, you forget about it the next day if they say no. But I would find here that people are pretty open to sharing for 10 or 15 minutes with somebody their experiences.
Great. And maybe again, kind of, Jane, from your perspective at Innovate Calgary, how do you help people network? How are you connecting people into jobs and opportunities?
Yeah, no, thanks, thanks, Graham. So probably the most obvious example that comes to mind. So the Life Science Innovation Hub that Medventions is housed within, and that the Life Science Fellowship sort of virtually resides in, I guess. One of the most compelling reasons to be a part of that program is our expert advisor network. So that's a panel of about 20 or 30 sort of experts in various areas of life science, business, and technical development, that folks who are part of the organization have access to on an annual basis. They have essentially sort of a bucket of hours that they can pull from. I mean, it's a challenge right now. The whole virtual with COVID, the whole virtual networking. I think you know, those kind of organic connections of walk with me down the hall and I'll introduce you to so and so, or having a conversation and someone else pops up. It's exceedingly difficult to make those connections. So I think we're all just sort of working a bit harder to try and you know, sort of make those handshakes happen in other ways. But I'm excited. We've got a great sort of collaborative work environment here in Calgary. Lots of different opportunity. I mean, the economy is sort of shifting here, moving toward technology away from the energy industry at a, you know, not at any rapid pace or anything like that. But there's tons of opportunities opening up. So I think, I mean, what one of the previous speakers suggested about, you know, I think said, you might have to have these awkward conversations and you're going to forget about them the next day. You know, I mean, as young entrepreneurs, I think you need to get comfortable with rejection. So you know, it will become sort of part of your toolbox of skills that you're just gonna, you know, that if you want to pursue that avenue of sort of taking on that role, you're going to have to get comfortable with, you know, casting a wide net where necessary, and just sort of seeing where things go. And I think, I mean, another point too is just becoming a really good listener. The point was touched on earlier as well. And, you know, as a skill set for customer discovery, as a skill set for really sort of understanding what, you know, the unmet needs actually are, and being able to sort of distill, you know, messaging down on the other end of the pipeline, if you will. I think that's a really important skill that it requires practice, I guess, like everything else. Yeah.
Great. And maybe just give Will a chance, because as well, to comment on, you know, venues for advocacy. Obviously, you're a very strong advocate for this whole field, but just, I mean, you identified a bunch in your talk. You worked at Heart and Stroke Foundation. You've talked about various parent organizations and like, so maybe you can just kind of help, at least in Ontario, help by people identify some of those things, some of those routes that you found. And
Yeah, and you know, I think it's just, I often email out people when they ask me, like, can you give me advice? You know, I want to get into engineering at this company. And I'm like, well, engineering is such a broad term. Is it R&D engineering? Is it process engineering? Is it manufacturing engineering? You know, there's such a variety. Is it advanced development? So I like to really start to understand yourself. And so when you think of other organizations, think about, what do you care about? What's, like, for me, it's education. It's really changed my life. And what matters to you? Heart and stroke matters to me. Hearing matters to me. You know, CEMB matters to me. What matters to you, and what organizations are out there, and what do they do? Start to map out what they do. Or they just expose yourself more and reach out to them. You may not be helping in the way that you want to help on day one, but give things time. It's really hard. I wish I could go back and tell myself that. It's just give things time, and things will be okay. And it just takes time, and it takes putting your foot forward and doing the job that maybe no one wants to do at this moment, but you're going to do it. And, you know, I've reached out to conferences, you know, things like this with Medventions. I've worked with you guys, but if I didn't work with you, I would have reached out to you and saw this coming up, and I would have said, how can I help? Right? Just small things like that will just really change people's perspective of you, and also open up new doors for you.
great, thanks. I see Brian and Brad are both on, and I just wanted to see if they had any questions or comments on this area of building the talent pipeline. I know Brian's had, you know, been very engaged at trying to recruit, you know, up to 100-person companies. So just that whole process. And so maybe from that perspective of somebody who started that and tried to build up a company, do you have comments on kind of finding that talent, building that talent pipeline in Canada?
There's I think the engineering talent is available, but you still have to work pretty hard to find the people that are going to be the best fit for the organization. So I think there are some great strengths there. as you're listening to William talk about some of the jobs, he talks about production engineering, sustaining engineering, quality engineering, and those aren't traditional engineering type. You normally hear about mechanical engineering, computer engineering, chemical engineering when you actually talk about university programs. But those are the fundamental programs that you get some domain experience in, and then when you're looking at moving to either a manufacturing environment or an R&D environment, there's specialization that's required. So it's important to just for people to supplement their skills, whether it's through seminar series or fellowships like Medventions or co-op education experiences, to really say, all right, this is the domain where I'm going to have that experience, but then I'll further specialize on a different dimension in some of those areas. We found the co-op program and the PEY programs to be incredibly helpful for us to hire at Canavi and at my lab at Sunnybrook. Given that myself and Amin Tind, who co-founded the company, were both products of co-op programs at the University of Waterloo, that's probably not a small coincidence. I think the ongoing exposure between medicine, clinical environments, and technical domains is also helpful. And just I'm answering a question by Helen Miliotis out there with respect to the question she has around what can universities do to prepare biomedical science students for filling talent gaps. And I do think it's in sort of that practical learning environment that there's just a really big role where the universities should continue to interact very strongly with industry and with healthcare systems, research institutions to find ways to give people the experiences they need to decide what skills they need to have for their career of choice. I think the other thing that's probably worth just mentioning from Canavi's side, we went through this COVID crisis, and we're fortunate we've only had to let go one person. That was our US-based employee. We were able to keep everyone else incredibly busy. A lot of people's roles had to change, and a lot of people showed a lot of flexibility. My salespeople and my clinical support people, their ability to do those jobs went down, but our demands within the organization and other parts of the business went up. And so there's been a lot of flexibility from people to just help find where the gaps are and be flexible, and the company will be flexible with them in their future requests too. Finally, we have a few people in our program or in our employee base that some people like to be really deep in some areas where they like to learn purely about one domain and manufacturing, engineering, research and development. Others, you want people who actually know various parts of the business, and you want to rotate them through various departments. And there's a lot of cross-pollination that can happen through that that's very helpful. So that's another strategy where we take some people and rotate them through different parts of the company to give them a multitude of experiences.
That's great.
Yeah.
Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, just maybe one comment. First of all, I have to recognize Baylis for being a real base device company for us in Toronto, and have made several visits there and listening to them. I think they're really incredibly gifted organization that's done it right, and a good example for all of us, right from the top management to all aspects of it. And I think the other part is I don't come from an engineering background, and Brian does, etc. From the 4 years we've done Medventions, the ability to interact regularly with these young engineers has been fantastic experience for us. Watching them, what they do after, and I think they do this. It does have impact on them. The several months they spend with us, sometimes longer. I really like what Calgary is doing, which has its own special, unique flavor to it. That it is different from ours. There's similarities to it, but I think that they're expanding it in a way that's unique to them. And the only thing I feel a little bit sad about is that we can't do it more. We have a lot of people applying. There's only a small number that we can actually take. And when you start to meet the individuals who have been the trainees in the program, and you realize the number who we haven't been able to take because we just don't have the space right now, to me it says that there's a huge need out there for more Medventions and larger programs and more teams to develop the talent, because I I'm certain that the talent is there, and I think they just need opportunities to grow. But that's just my own reflections from doing it for the last few years.
Thanks, Brad. I think that's a good way to wrap up this session, and just recognize that for those, I think there was that, like the comment about you should just get out there and, you know, don't worry about rejection. I think the point being made here is that the folks on the other end, they love to talk to you. I mean, everybody in this game is very passionate about it. So especially young minds who are kind of wanting to get into the field, it's what keeps us going too. So before I pass it over to Brian for his just closing remarks, I'm just going to ask Ahmed to kind of put up in the chat again, just a reminder to folks that this has all been recorded, and so we'll let you know where to find it. And also, we do want to have a session afterwards where people can just talk one-on-one, and you can put up the GatherTown links while Brian's kind of bringing us to a close. So again, thank you all to the speakers. It was a great session and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really want to, we enjoy, Brad and Graham and Ahmed and I look forward to this event every year, and really glad that we were able to draw people despite the pandemic to this through a virtual symposium. You know, there's some things that are good about the virtual symposium. Others, I kind of miss the in-person interaction, as I'm sure we all do. So we'll have some significant discussions to see what we'll do next year. It's exciting to see the program grow out to the west with the involvement of people in Calgary. So great to have you here with us this year. And, you know, really looking forward to how things evolve over the course of the next year when we get to get together again. As always, really important for me to thank some key people. Obviously, the co-directors, Brad and Graham, thank you. Ahmed, who is our program manager, incredibly talented and organized, and makes this whole thing tick. So thank you very much, Ahmed, for all the work that you do here, as well as Jane Rookwood, who is very important in helping us to organize the event. So I just want to thank everyone who's contributed, and also thank all the participants and the attendees. And we look forward to continuing future interactions of a similar nature, hopefully some of them in person in addition to this new virtual format. But also, if people can please just take some time to fill out the surveys that will be coming out, just so we can better inform ourselves for future events. That'd be great, especially given the new format for this year. So with that, I'll be in the GatherTown, and I hope to see a few of you there. Thank you so much.